If you're watching this video, it's probably because you've already done some movement intelligence processes with me through Bones for Life and have already had some experience learning about wave and axis. And this process that I'm going to talk about today is called Silken Scarf Along roller, and it is also called synchronized proportional flexibility, and that is a big mouthful. Synchronized proportional flexibility. But I brought a little tool today to introduce it, and this is a kid story really, but I always remember them, and we'll think about it in relationship to the spine and the pelvis. And so we're going to think about our pelvis as a handle, and the sacrum in the center as the place where the handle is welded to the whip. Okay, if the body of the snake is the whip and I'm holding on to the pelvis, the sacrum being that welded place, and I'll show you pelvis in just a second. But as we begin to explore moving the pelvis in a fashion to generate a synchronized proportional flexibility through the spine, we'll start to get this wave-like motion. And you see that as I begin to generate this kind of motion, even though I'm not intentionally moving the head moves. And this is a feeling once you get going with this process where you start to think, am I doing the movement or is the movement doing me? Because it begins to generate itself. And it's very important in order to be able to establish axis. So if you recall from wave and axis lessons, axis, one way to notice it that's kind of simple is when you're walking, you walk forward, your foot strikes the ground, and there's that way in which your body is sort of lifted a little, and you feel the stiffening that is involved in finding axis in your movement. And in order to find axis, we must have proportional flexibility. And this is might seem a little bit like a paradox, but it's not. They go together. So let me show you pelvis so you can get a sense of that, and then I'll tell you some of the key points to think about as we go forward with this lesson. So here's your pelvis. This whole big thing is the pelvis, and we're going to think about that as our handle. Okay, sacrum is just all these fused vertebrae. It looks like a big triangle that holds these two big bones. Well, it doesn't hold them, but it joins these two big bones on either side, your ilium. And so we think about this as the welded part that holds the handle together. Okay, and then spine goes up from there. So we're going to think about this and have this image in our mind. If you're an auditory learner, or you just like to, like me, you're curious about things and enjoy thinking about them from multiple approaches, you could listen to a canon, a musical canon, Pachelbel's canon. Everybody's heard that, even if you're not a music lover. And you will hear in those sounds synchronized proportional flexibility. One part moves, then another part moves, and another part moves, and they're each going in the same direction, but on a delay. So there are a couple ways that we can turn. One is where my head and my pelvis go together at the same time. Sometimes my head and pelvis might go opposite, but in this case, my head and pelvis are going together, but it's one and then another and then another. And it's like a delay, and it creates a whip at the end, and there's a way that it brings the head back around and then begins to generate itself. So we'll be playing around with that. I think you'll love it. So an important benefit of this streaming motion of synchronized proportional flexibility when we do silken scarf, the process, is that it succeeds in opening up movement into the stiffest segment of the upper back and the upper spine. And it does this without force. So in the consistent and smooth rhythm has its own momentum to bypass resistance. And of course, when we're going to lie on a roller, a rolled up blanket or towel under our head and neck and entire spine. Well, first we'll start out on the floor, bolstered in different ways, but then we'll do this silken scarf movement, and that's another image that you can have. We've all probably held a scarf, and if you have a little breeze, you just know how that movement follows. So like the snake that I showed you and the sound of a cannon, these are other ways that we can relate to this kind of movement, not only in our bodies, but in the world, in the natural environment. So in order to really find our axis, that way in which parts organize themselves in a straight line so that we can oppose gravity, it may seem a little bit like a paradox, but we must have the flexibility of the individual parts. And so having already done lessons of wave and axis and become familiar with that awareness in your own body, I think you'll really begin to feel the sophistication of this process that we're going to do. And you'll either be getting ready to do it and watching this video, or perhaps you may have chosen to watch the video after. Video is just a little food for your brain, and sometimes we can have a little too much food for our brain and get stuck there. But I think used properly, it enriches and develops your body awareness and your whole experience of doing the movement processes. So here's a little outline of what we're going to do. If you'd like to think about it in advance, if you don't, you can just skip ahead to the lesson and think about it later, or don't think about it at all. So the first thing we'll do is prepare a roller that's about 1 meter long and with a diameter of 10 centimeters. And so this could be a blanket or some other kind of fabric that's rolled that gives you a little support. The first thing we'll do is lie on our back with our head near the wall, and we're gonna take the roller and support like our one side hip and our one side shoulder, so that our body's lying on the floor on a little bit of an incline. And then we're gonna start experimenting and feeling through this wave and whip-like motion from the pelvis that travels up. And then while we're on our back, just like when we did wave and axis, we're going to use our hand on the wall to experiment with these oscillations and waves, with the chin moving up and down, feeling different elements. And then we'll do several different variations of that. Some work with the knees standing with both hands on the wall, and then experimenting with because you're lying on the roller, you're like one side of your body is up and the other one is lower. We'll experiment with lifting that lower side up to be equal with the raised side. And then we'll do all that on the other side of the body. Then finally, after we've experimented with having the body in these different inclines with the roller and doing the synchronized movement with that incline, and then checking in again to see how we always like to check our beginning and ending place along the way. And then we'll do some movement with the roller underneath our spine. It'll be under our head and all the way down our body on our spine. So we'll have knees bent, arms relaxed, and we'll begin to do this silken scarf movement from side to side. And the pelvis starts first, and then the head turns last, like a passive response to the pull of the torso. And because the roller is supporting the midline of the spine, we'll have opportunity to produce the wave and axis pattern. And then in the end, just like we start everything, we'll pause to feel our ending place. I hope you'll enjoy it.